Okay, so let's get started. Vamos começar. Bom dia a todos e a todas. A gente vai dar início à defesa do doutorado do Ronald Chiesse de Souza. Eu vou falar em inglês porque nós temos membros da banca que ainda não falam português, apesar de já terem trabalhado com brasileiros, que é o professor Towsley. So, welcome everybody to Ronald's PhD defense. Very nice to have you here. People in the audience remote, hello, good morning. So today, Ronald is going to present his PhD work, his thesis, and the way it works is that Ronald will have 40 minutes to do his presentation, between 40 and 45 minutes. Then we have the committee who is going to make questions. After that, we open the word to the public, so if you have any comments or questions to Ronald, you can make them after the committee. And then after that, there's a closed session where the committee discusses and evaluates Ronald's work. And after that, we announce the results. So that's how it's going to take place. And for the committee today, we have 5 people. I'm Daniel Ratton Figueiredo, professor of computer science and engineering, and Ronald's advisor. I'm part of the committee. And then as external members, we have Professor Towsley from UMass, Professor Fabricio Murai from Worcester Polytechnic Institute, WPI. And then from the department, we have 2 more members, Valmir Barbosa, who is my colleague here, and Pedro González, also a professor in the department, and the most recent acquirer of our department. So Pedro, very nice to have you. Welcome to PESC, and let's hope we can be together in many future committees. Okay. With that said, let's get started. I ask everybody remote to mute their mics, and I pass the word to Holly. It's all yours.
Well, hi, good morning everyone, and it's my pleasure to have you all in here in the audience, and I am profoundly grateful to you all from the evaluation committee for all the time and patience devoted to evaluate my job, my work. So thank you, Valmir, Dom, Fabricio, Pedro, thank you all. So, okay, this talk will be about modeling and predicting network epidemics based on random walks with local protection effects. So, the first things first, okay? What do we mean by network epidemics? Well, essentially a framework, okay? Any dynamic processes through which carriers of a propagator pass it along to their neighbors. When I say neighbor, I mean any entity that these carriers keep some direct contact with in some context, in some sense, okay? So this framework is actually adopted across various domains. For instance, cascading failures, fire through forests, fluid through porous materials, and obviously infectious diseases among individuals. And yes, this is going to be our scope today, okay? So now we are ready to talk about motivation. So what is the purpose that drives our energy in here? Well, to understand how epidemics evolve and die out is actually extremely valuable, okay? For instance, it grants us with the possibility of avoiding them, such as the COVID-19 pandemic, which we unfortunately have witnessed not long ago. And well, this is a hard task, however, a very hard task, because we have to cope with lots of questions. For instance, who has started the outbreak? Where? What are the propagation laws? And what is the contact pattern? Does it change with time? How? Okay, basically, this is going to be our scope in this presentation, okay? And, okay, now that we talked about epidemics framework, let's talk about protection effects. What does this even mean? Well, okay, protection effects is also known as disease behavior dynamics, and it's essentially a set of measures individuals take to avoid contagion, once aware that an epidemic unfolds nearby. And actually, there are many possible protective actions, such as mask wearing, pretty common, hand washing, avoiding locations, and why it's highlighted, it's because this is going to be our focus. Which is a shorthand for protection effects, derived from mobility, as we are going to see in short. We are going to focus on SIS epidemics on networks. When I say SIS, this is a shorthand for susceptible, infected, susceptible, okay? This is a compartmental model for epidemics. Well, this has to be noticed as well. Protection is not intervention. These are fundamentally different things. Protection ethics relies essentially on individual engagement. It's essentially the risk perception of the individual. It breeds within the individual, okay? Whereas intervention happens like it or not. It's government-driven policies, such as quarantines, closure of schools, restaurants, airports, and so on and so forth. So, and traditionally, not only this is true, but traditionally, these are modeled as different things also. Both are considered to reduce the SI contact rates, okay, but intervention is typically considered or regarded as being able to actually making the epidemic to die out, whereas the protection effects generally is accounted as an effect of saturation level for the epidemic rate. But in short, we're going to show that it depends on the epidemic model, and we'll soon see conditions under which protection effects may also lead to disease-free steady states, okay? So, okay, now we're ready to talk about network epidemic models. Traditionally, nodes represent individuals, and epidemic states such as susceptible or infected are assigned to these nodes. But on agent-based models, or for short ABM, nodes represent sites or locations, and agents or individuals, they move across these sites. And epidemic states are thus assigned to agents, not the nodes, the agents, okay? And, okay, our approach in this work will be essentially ABM, okay? We're going to talk about it. So let's model the protection effects under this setup, under this scheme. How could mobility encode risk aversion? How could that even be possible? Well, the first thing that crosses our minds are, well, by not going anywhere during the entire outbreak. Yeah, it's effective, but totally unfeasible, okay? Well, let's think of another option. Another option would be with global information of infectives, such as the total number of agents and their current location globally. Well, this is not happening, okay? This is actually not happening. So let's think of yet another option. Local information. That gets more interesting. Neighboring sites containing agents. How exactly? Well, the idea here, which will be our focus, is to promote biased mobility dependent on local neighborhood. So, SI contacts, they will be avoided, okay, but they may still occur. So these dynamics or agents coming and going all around, they're going to avoid locations there. You know beforehand that there is some risk of being exposed to infection, okay? So let's go. Before talking about protection effects, essentially, we have to talk about our basic mobility model, which is a simple or uniform random walk, for short, SRW. So how does that work? Well, essentially in this graph right here, where nodes represent sites, we have three different things here. Blue circles for susceptible agents, red circles for infected agents, and whenever these guys meet at one single node, this represents risk, and therefore the possibility of this infection being propagated, okay? So let's suppose that this highlighted blue agent here is about to walk. When it's about to walk and we are talking about the uniform random walk, it's equally likely that it will choose any of its neighboring edges. So they are equally likely, and this is another way to say that the weight you assign to every edge is unitary, okay? So these two possibilities from the left and from the right, they are equally likely to happen. This one, you notice that there is a SI contact in here. The agent has chosen to go to a risky place. And in this other option, this same agent has decided to go to somewhere that nobody was in there before. But these possibilities are equally likely. Well, now protection index comes into place. Instead of choosing uniformly, just as we did in the previous slide, now we are going to talk about a risk tolerance. These are levels W sub S and W sub I. These levels go from 0 to 1, and the idea is that the instantaneous probability of going to somewhere else now depends on how is the state of the neighboring site. For instance, if this highlighted blue node here was about to move, now it no longer chooses uniformly between the possibilities, but if the possibility leads to a safe site, then it's unitary weight. But if it leads to a risky location, then this probability is less than 1, okay? So now this is a whole different story. Now the situation on the left is less likely to happen, and the situation on the right is more likely to happen in comparison to the left-hand side, okay? So now we're ready to talk about propagation law. So for our model, sparsity is assumed in the sense that the number k of the population, the number k of agents, is much less than, is much smaller than the number n of nodes. There are much more nodes or much more locations than agents walking through these locations, okay? An infection event, it will depend on the occurrence of an assay contact, okay? And on the total time of exposition. And an exposed S agent gets infected if the I agent's transmission event fires before the assay contact ends. This will be detailed soon. Well, and about the model, now we can see that this is actually a very parsimonious model. It depends on a single parameter W, which can be understood as the average between W sub S and W sub I. Okay, their mean is essentially what guides you. So you have degree of freedom to cope with these two parameters, and instead you can talk about a single W. Okay, and it generalizes the classical SRW, where in a uniform random walk, W is always equals 1. So we have generalized this. And there are two couple dynamics running in parallel here. It should be noticed. Mobility via biased random walks, and disease spread via assay contacts. Okay? So main contributions to be seen in this work. Well, first, ordinary differential equation models that predict the epidemic dynamics with protection effects. Well, first we are going to do this for complete graphs, and then we generalize this model for degree uncorrelated networks. Then we are going to present a closed form for the agent's expected block. Ronald, what is agent's expected block? It will be seen, so shortly it will be clear what we're talking about. So then we will show a special regime which allows this very prediction to be made not by a system of equations, but by one single equation in constant time. Then we are going to show a theoretical evidence, never seen before, that heterogeneity on agent-based models for network epidemics, they actually is capable of boosting the spreading, okay? And last, we're going to see thresholds, actual thresholds for protection level that leads to disease-free steady states, okay? So, okay, let's begin. ODE model. To talk about an ODE model, first we have to talk about events. So what are our focus, our main events? Well, an agent may do three different things. Walk, infect other agents, and recover, essentially. And our assumption is that all of these are Markovian events. It's just that these are exponentially distributed, so they are memoryless. So it breeds a Markov chain, okay? And our analysis will thus be made through the expected value of the number of infectives upon ordinary differential equations. So we're essentially trying to understand what is the rate of change of the density of infectives as time goes by, okay? Notice that these are actually exponentially distributed events, as I said. So we're going to represent by the symbol lambda, the walk rate, tau, the disease transmissibility rate, and gamma, the recovery rate, okay? So, okay, now that we have these three guys here on the right side, we have to talk about more appropriately the evolution of infectives for complete graphs. We need more three elements here. S and I will represent the number of susceptibles and infectives, okay? Alpha here represents the contact rate, the SI contact rate, or the contact rate that could mean a propagation lately, okay? And sigma is the infection probability. So essentially, what we want to achieve is this formula right here. But our big question mark is, who's alpha? Who is sigma? So we have to determine these guys right here. So let's first determine sigma. Well, given an SI contact, lambda for walk and tau for rate, they become competing exponentials. One thing will happen before another one. And it can be shown that sigma, or the probability of infection, is the rate at which the transmissibility event happens before these other events right here, where any among the both agents can walk away the node, okay? On the other hand, alpha, which is the SI contact rate, it depends on two separated things that we have to understand are now big question marks now, goes to the probability that an SI agent provokes an SI contact and the probability that an I agent provokes an SI contact. So these are different things, but the rationale is analog for both cases. So how do we determine this probability of encounter? Well, under the sparsity assumption, there are I nodes containing I agents due to sparsity, one per node. Each such node is avoided with a bias W sub S. Well, there are essentially remaining N minus I nodes that are actually safe. So our final formula for the probability is this one in the screen, okay? And analogously for Q is that other one. And actually, we can expand, because of that, we can expand this SI contact rate to this formula right here, which can be further simplified actually, because we will soon see that, okay, we have this final formula, which is essentially what we want to achieve, okay? This first formula right here was expanded in its fully form, and this is essentially what we want, but we can first describe it in terms of density, okay? Now, density, you notice that I'm noting that through, in short case, a lowercase I, because this goes from 0 to 1. And this guy right here, we can actually simplify. Notice this denominator right here. These terms, they are actually very close to n itself because of sparsity. N is way bigger than the other term. Then we can simply assume that these guys are close to n. And here we have our final form of our predictor for the complete network. And here it must be noticed, W, which is the protective level, it plays a fundamental role here to be discussed later. Decreasing W actually decreases the SI contact rate, as you guys can see here, but we later see it in the results, okay, how it works more properly. So, okay, we have went through our ODE model for complete graphs. Now let's tackle the degree and correlated networks. Let's go for it. Okay, now how is the evolution of effectives for degree and correlated networks? Well, we need first additional key assumptions, okay? Essentially, now we have to consider that each node contains a self-loop. This was not needed on the previous model, but now we need to consider that each node contains a self-loop, and it will be clear why is it. And degrees are uncorrelated. Why degrees uncorrelated, Ronald? Well, randomly chosen link under the degree uncorrelated assumption, a randomly chosen link from a node with degree B prime leads to a node with degree B, irrespectively of what is B prime, what degree is B prime. So we can then treat all these nodes as statistically equivalent. Nodes with same degree become statistically equivalent, okay? And this is actually a well-known technique termed degree block approximation, okay? So we're going to have actually this scenario right here, where nodes with same degrees are treated as all together, okay? So we can treat them statistically equivalently. And the idea will be to promote differential equations that describe beyond the different states, the different epidemic states. We also have additional equations for the different blocks. And the number of blocks in the network is orders of magnitude less than the number of nodes. So that's why this is tremendously advantageous. So, okay, here is our block level predictor. It's still without protection effects. So, don't get worried about it. Let us walk through these values first. So here, what essentially we have is a system of equations fixed a degree b, okay? So for every degree that happens in the network, we have two equations for that degree, okay? And these two equations are describing how infectives and susceptibles from that block, they evolve along the time. So what is the rate of change for these two quantities? So let's understand how it evolves, okay? First, we can see that there are 5 main terms in here. And the first one is the number of agents from outside B, or from outside that block B, that walking at rate lambda, they hop into B with probability Q sub B, okay? And the second term, which is negative, this is the number of agents that are already within the block B, but they are walking at rate lambda, and they choose to leave that block with probability complementary to Q sub B, which is 1 minus Q sub B, okay? But this rate of change, it will increase, so here's a positive sign, it will increase with the number of I agents already within B that walk in an effective rate lambda B. They meet a total of S sub B divided by N sub B S agents, or is the number of agents within a single node, okay? This is the number of agents within a single node. And 2, they infect them with some probability sigma B, which is the probability of infecting a node within the block B, okay? The rate of change for susceptibles follows analogously, okay? The same way, just like we did before. And last, in an independent fashion, we have that the number of I agents within B, this rate changes negatively with the number of I agents within B that recover at rate gamma, okay? So the same thing goes to the other equation, so the same rationale here. So this is going to be our block level predictor, and it can be simplified and be noted in terms of density, still without protection defects here, okay? So our new equation becomes this one right here, or our new system, okay? Our new system of equations. So, okay, we are still going to be there, okay? We are reaching that point. Now we are going to discuss a special regime which allows for 101 prediction, okay? Because we are talking about degree and correlated networks, but we still have not reached the protection level, the protection effects in there. So, but let's discuss a special regime that allows for 01 prediction. Well, we need preliminary definitions for the special regime. Additional definitions will be required. First, is that the agent's is the definition for agent's expected block. Well, an agent's expected block is actually a very well-known result, which is the expected value for the stationary distribution of a uniform random walk of the degree function, okay? So there is a stationary distribution of this a simple random walk. You have to measure, you're measuring the degree function on this random process, and there is an expected value for that. And this is known to be, I say very well known to be, the sum of each possible outcome times the probability of that outcome. So this is exactly the definition. And as for today, this is this is only what everybody knows. But we can actually establish a closed form for that. And this is actually another contribution of us, because although this is well known, there's no closed form known for that. But we prove in our thesis that this number is actually this one right here, which is the ratio between the second moment of a network and the first moment of a network. And this is our contribution. We now know exactly where this quantity is actually converging to, okay? And because of that, we can actually also define something that we call expected agglomeration. What is the expected agglomeration? Well, it's the expected number of agents that you hope to see in a given block B divided by the size of that block, okay? And you actually are weighting that for the probability or the density of agents you expect on that block, the density of agents, okay? And we would have to stop in this penultimate equation, if not for the previous result. But now that we know what is the agent's expected block, now we can go further on the semantics behind the expected agglomeration and go to the rightmost equation right here, where now it's clear that the expected agglomeration is actually the product of the number of agents within the network times the expected block that these will be located at, divided by the size of the network times the average connectedness of that network. Okay. Okay. So now we are ready to go further on this special regime. We need just one more definition, which is state level mixing. What is that? Well, the key observation here is if an S agent, for instance, it could be with an I agent also, okay, but we will focus on an S agent. If an S agent J performs many hops prior to getting infected, then the mixing time is approached prior to a state change, okay? And because of that, the probability that J is at any node V is still as an S agent approaches the stationary probability of any agent being at that same node. And we call this phenomenon state level mixing, okay? And this actually happens to be quite common under sparse regimes. Due to sparsity, this actually happens naturally, almost naturally, okay? So now we are ready to enunciate our special regime. So this is matching density condition, or for short, MDC. What is this about? Well, in the previous example, what we have just seen, S agents yield something that we call state level mixing, okay? Thus, the expected value on the distribution of these agents across the network with respect to their total population, or the number of susceptible individuals within any given block with respect to the overall number of susceptibles. This approaches the density of agents at that same block, the density of agents in any state, okay? And since the number of agents within any given block, the number KB of agents in any given block is partitioned between susceptibles and infectives, then the population for infectives must follow the same rule forcefully, irrespective of whether these are mixing at state level, okay? And that breeds what we call matching density condition, which are saying for us two different things. First, that the expected density of susceptibles and infectives with respect to their specific populations within every given block is the same, okay? So this expected value is state invariant. But more than that, it not only is a state invariant, it actually is equal to the expected density of agents at that node, okay? And it holds for every block, okay? And why this is important? Well, this is important because now, because of that very fact, block level variables now can be described in terms of global variables and local constants. So each local variable for each block, now you're going to replace that by a global number of susceptibles times a constant value that we know beforehand, even before the epidemic start, because this does not depend on the epidemic. This does not depend, this is state invariant. So this is a good approximation for the block level variables. We can vanish them all. So by making such a replacement in the block level predictor, we'll yield these two master equations right here. And this one for population and this one for the density. And notice that we have replaced a system of equations to one single equation to describe the whole system irrespective of its size. And there are consequences, enormous consequences for that. So we're only talk about 3 of these consequences, okay? First is that the degree, it starts the degree distribution. That probability Q sub B no longer plays a role because we are no longer dealing with transitioning from one block to another. We don't have to cope with that. So the no degree correlation premise drops. More than that, there is block independence, and a single master equation now suffices to describe the whole system. And our next contribution is this slide right here. Now it's evident that a major structural aspect is there. Heterogeneity boosts the spreading. And how can we see that? Through the second moment right here, divided by the first moment squared. And because of this difference, the more heterogeneous is the network, the more the second moment will increase or quicker than the first moment squared. Okay, it will increase quicker. So because the numerator will increase quicker, the more heterogeneous is the network, then actually the more heterogeneous the network is, the more intense will be the propagation. Okay, so yeah, the agents will concentrate at the hubs. Okay, so this is also a new contribution for ABMs for network epidemics. There was nothing like this before. So okay, and it is important to highlight that it holds even without MDC. And this is actually something quite nice because you have a result that is for a particular case, but it applies for any other case. Why? Because the relation between the first and the second moments is there. It was not on the surface. When you consider a system of equations, it was hidden on the system of equations. And so even when MDC does not hold, we know that heterogeneity plays a fundamental role on the spreading process. Okay? So now we're ready to go for a more general degree and correlated networks model with protection effects this time. Okay? So due to sparsity, we may consider that agents will still choose blocks with probability Q sub B. Okay? But the probability of an assay contact within block B, however, now it is given by this equation right here. Okay? It's quite alike we've just seen for the complete graphs, but now we are assuming only the population that goes within that specific block. Okay? That's the only thing that has actually changed from that. So, but due to sparsity, we can make the very same simplification we did before. So this final probability can be further simplified to this simple ratio right here. So the block level assay contact rates now for susceptibles and infected agents are therefore given by these formulas right here. And now that we know the assay contact rates, now we just have to plug that back on our previous model. But this time, look at this. The protection effects is in there. So this is our final equation, our final result that leads to block level system, a predictor at block level system that actually incorporates the protection effects or buys the random walks. And we are doing that for every block. So this is actually the rate of change of infectives and susceptibles within each block. Okay, and now it's considering protection effects for degree and correlated generic networks. Okay, and okay, when MDC holds, we may further reduce that system, and now we can use this one master equation here, where W or the protection effects goes on the numerator, or in terms of densities, that equation right there where the expected agglomeration has naturally arose in replacement to an otherwise block level system. Okay? And they will happen here again. So now, the only main contribution that lasts for us to talk about is the thresholds for data that leads to disease-free steady states. Okay? So we are going to discuss that for MDC cases, right? And the basic reproduction number, R sub 0, this equals the force of infection, beta, okay, divided by gamma. Gamma is the recovery rate. So this is a classical metric which considers the pathogen's spreading potential. So if this number, R sub 0, is less than 1, then it means that we are likely to see a very short-lived epidemic, right? But if this number is greater than 1, then we're about to expect, we are likely to expect a long-lasting epidemic, okay? And in our case, this force of infection beta is given by this equation right here, which you guys may see that is this portion of our previous equation, okay? So this is our force of infection. But, okay, now we have that a very natural question arises. Is there a range of values for the protection effects that ensures that this reproduction number will be less than 1? Well, without protection, no, there is no number for that. But if we encode our protective level, then yes, if and only if our protective level lies below this threshold right here, where you guys may notice that this is almost what we put as the force of infection, okay? And this is one of our results, okay? So if that meets this threshold, then you're guaranteed to have a short-lived epidemic, okay? But we can go further and be more ambitious, okay? So is there a range of values for W that ensures R less than 1 for asymptotically large, for infinitely large values for lambda, or the walk rate? And we prove that, yes, this value exists. So if the walk rate tends to infinity, then this force of infection, this is the force of infection, right? If the walk rate tends to infinity, where this force of infection goes? Well, this is going actually to this condition right here. And in this case, we prove that the protective level that will ensure a short-lived epidemic is given by this formula right here, okay? And now we're ready to talk about numerical results. This first result is for complete graphs, okay? And actually, that first model of us for complete graphs, we have in here the fraction, fraction of infected individuals on the y-axis, and on the x-axis, the simulation time. So the fraction of infectives along with time, okay? And what's going on here? Well, we have 4 sets of 2 curves each, okay? 4 sets of 2 curves each. The first curve, that zigzagged one, is the actual simulation. It's an epidemic going on, okay? The fraction of infectives going with time. In a complete network here, the number of nodes is 100,000 nodes, okay? And the number of agents is 2,000 agents, okay? So we may notice that this is sparse, okay? And okay, they are the epidemic is going on, and the smooth curve, the zigzag is a simulation, and the smooth curve is the prediction of our model. And you may see that our model is accurate for every level of protection. This data right here is the level of protection that we were actually imposing to the epidemic, right? So the first one is dBO equals 0.8. And as we lower this risk tolerance, as we lower this level of tolerance to go to risky locations, then the level of epidemic or the endemic level goes lower, lower, and lower, and it may even come to die out if this protection level is restrictive enough. Okay, and okay, this was our first result. But now we have a even more interesting result that is for degree uncorrelated networks. This departs from our final model for degree uncorrelated networks with protection effects. And here we have 4 sets of 3 curves each. Again, we have the fraction of effectives along with time, okay? And okay, the zigzag curves are the actual simulation. And for each case, we have our prediction, or the smooth curves are our prediction for the block level system that have to calculate for each block what's going on and make that numerical solution for each block. And the other one is our one equation, the master equation, okay? And it's astounding that actually these 2 curves, these 2 predictors, they happen to overlap almost perfectly to every case. It's hard to even see one or the other. They are actually one above the other. So it's very accurate the way that they have predicted the epidemic for all these different levels of epidemic. More than that, we actually have seen that when the protective level is low enough, or the restriction is high enough, then the epidemic will die out, and our model is capable of predicting that the epidemic will die out. And notice that even this transitive regime is actually captured very well. Not only the endemic, the state of the stationary regime, but also the transitive regime. Okay. Okay, so there is an analogous result for GNP. So this is the same that we've seen before for a Barbosa-Albert network, but this time for a GNP graph. So we see for this different structure that, again, our models, our predictors, they are very accurate. And this one right here, we can barely see what the simulation has actually produced when data equals 0, 1. And so this is very accurate, and they are overlapping one another again. This last result is actually this is different from the others, because now we have a GNP network, and now the x-axis is the walk rate lambda that is increasing. It begins with 1, 2, 3, 4, goes to 10, and then 20, okay? So this walk rate is increasing, and what we are actually capturing here is the average duration of the epidemic as the walk rate increases. So each dot from each curve actually encodes 10 runs of simulation, okay? Each dot is 10 runs, is the average of 10 runs of simulation. And we have that for different levels of protection, okay? Different levels for risk tolerance. And this last one right here, we highlight the W equals 0.65 because we have for that case that as we predicted, the threshold lies below 1, 0.985. So we can be assured that no matter how much you increase the walk rate, this curve will never top a supercritical regime. It will always be a short-lived epidemic by theory, okay? So we know that this abrupt raise will never happen, okay? So our conclusion is that we have provided in here in this talk contributions for the theory of agent-based network epidemics. And ODE models, first of all, ODE models that predict the epidemic dynamics with or with protection effects for complete graphs and for more general degree uncorrelated networks, okay? We have also provided a closed form for the agent's expected block, which now everybody knows that is a well-known resulting theory, but this number right here, no one knows that existed. So this is a contribution of ours. A special regime which allows for a constant time prediction, okay, of an epidemic with network with any size you will, as long as the regime is sparse, okay. And now we have also came up with a theoretical evidence, the first theoretical evidence that heterogeneity boosts the spreading, even in situations where MDC does not hold, okay? We have also provided thresholds for the protective level that drives the epidemic to disease-free steady states. And we have also made publicly available an epidemic simulator, okay, that can be accessed through that link that will be available in the future. And as a future work, as a direct future work among many that we can think of, the directed or the natural step is to design models that cope with dense regimes, okay? So thank you a lot.